What's up, guys? We're back here for not the start of the new golf season. I know the Safeway Open happened last week, and I apologize for missing last week. It was just a lot going on. That'll happen. Hopefully not too much. But this week we've got the CIMB Classic in Kuala Lumpur at TPC Kuala Lumpur. Let's just jump right into it. We got a lot going on this year that I think is really exciting, and in a weird way, I'm actually pretty happy to be starting with this tournament because I think rather than just doing the standard player evaluations, which I will do, but I think there's more to it this week because there's a smaller field, only 80 guys, and no cut. So I think there's a different strategy for the types of guys you're going to want to go with, and B, also a different strategy for the types of lineups you're going to try and construct. And I'll get into that at the end of the video. Before I do that, I'm just going to talk about the players, and I think a common theme you're going to see that sticks out is that you can really make arguments for a lot of the guys. And I've said this before in formats like this. I think your lineup construction is far more important than I think it's far more valuable information that I can give you than maybe a small snippet about a player that you didn't know. Sure, if there's someone you wouldn't have thought of and I give you a piece of information that really benefits or really makes him stand out to you, of course that's valuable and I'm happy to do that. But I'm just really trying to emphasize how important I think, how careful and how important lineup construction is this week. So sorry for that little rant, but let's jump into the players. The top 5, the guys over 10K. That's too few. Let's do 9K and above. So you gotta start with Justin Thomas, of course. He's the max. I think maybe Rory was 12K like a few years ago, a few times, but I don't think we've seen anybody over 11.7 in a really long time. Look, Justin has great course history, is by far the best player in the field. I haven't even looked at Bovada odds to win, or whatever site you would use, Pinnacle, anything. But I can't imagine anyone's close to him. With that being said, this is also a tournament where I think there's a lot of plays towards the bottom. And we'll get there, when I get to those prices. But that is an argument for going with Justin Thomas because with no cut, you don't really need to go with a middling lineup as much because, look, you don't need guys to consistently make the cut. You just need guys who have some chance at top 5ing and can make a lot of birdies. That's who you'd want to pair with Justin Thomas, who has an overwhelming chance to win. The downside to Justin Thomas is ownership and, dare I say, recent form. I know he played well in the Ryder Cup, but he did not have a good playoffs for Justin Thomas. And so your decision really is, can I make a unique lineup with Justin Thomas that I really like? And do I think that he is just so much vastly better than the guys we'll talk about who even you might like in the mid 9,000s that you just have to go with him? But I do think that JT's popularity this week is going to be such that you don't want to just make 3 lineups and have one of them be Justin just to have coverage, because that's going to be so hard for you to win. If you're making 3 lineups and putting them in those 3 maxes, I would recommend going all Justin or none. And I think either is fine. I don't think you have to use that strategy with the next few guys because, man, I just don't see any, maybe Ryan Moore, but I just don't see any of their ownerships being. My roommate's a big golf fan, and when we were talking prices, he was like grossed out by the next 4 prices, and they just didn't make sense to him. Like, how can you justify paying $10,700 for Billy Horschel? And I just think that that's how a lot of people are going to think. And I think I would tend to agree with that. But if you were going to say, who would you go with in that group if you were going for like a contrarian play, or hell, even if you were just going to try and pitch an argument to go with one of them, Billy Horschel would be my number 1 guy. So Kuala Lumpur is 7,000 yards. It's a par 72 that's 7,000 yards. That is crazy. Distance still has mattered some. If you look at the leaderboards over the last few years, people who hit it further have still tended to fare well. And my best explanation for that would be, one, when they hit driver, if they're gaining strokes off the tee, that value is extrapolated because there's a bigger difference. Like, say it's a 350-yard par 4. I think there's probably a bigger difference in being, 30 to 40 yards away from the green if guys get crazy and hit driver. Whereas a guy whose average tee shot is 290, 300, probably is just going to hit iron off that tee, and that's a 100-yard difference. Whereas on a longer course, guys are hitting driver, and 450-yard par 4, 120 yards versus 150 yards, yeah, that's meaningful because that's wedge versus, or that's like sand wedge versus pitching wedge for most guys, but it's not as big. And then the other difference is they don't even have to hit driver. Like, Keith Mitchell can hit his freaking 3-iron or 5-wood as far as Ryan Armour hits his driver most times, I guess. I mean, that's a big deal too, because you're just more consistently in the fairway. I'd say 2 is more meaningful than 1. Point is, distance does matter. All the par 5s are gettable. That's another reason it matters. And the biggest thing to talk about with Kuala Lumpur is they just this year changed the greens to these two Bermuda greens, and they are going to be fast. So scores will still be low, but putting matters a little bit more. And to bring this full circle, Billy Horschel can putt with the best of them. 23rd last year in the world in strokes gained putting. He just does it all across the board, honestly. His worst thing that I weighted this week is proximity. He's not hitting it very close, but he's still gaining strokes on approach. That doesn't really make much sense to me. I'll have to think about that some more. But he scores on par 5s. He makes birdies on everything. If you're looking for a contrarian play, Billy Horschel is probably the play. I don't really like Xander at all. Paul Casey. I mean, there was a time a year and a half ago when Paul Casey you either had to go all or nothing because he was going to be so popular, and for good reason. But now his price seems to have gone up recently while his form and his actual results have gone down. And I'm not sure how you can justify paying 10.2 for Paul Casey when Keegan Bradley's there for 9,900 or Gary Woodland for 9,700. I skipped Ryan Moore. Ryan Moore's won this event twice. I think he's going to be really, really hurt by the green change. I'm not really sure what his ownership's like. DraftKings is always so weird. Or Daily Fantasy, I shouldn't say DraftKings, I guess. Like, I was talking to my friend about it today. So Ryan Moore got second last week. I mean, lost in a playoff, so he very well could have won, obviously. And he has great course history. So what are the people going to do? Are the people going to look at that and just ride him and say, hey, he's 800 cheaper than Justin Thomas, and I think he might be as good at this course, which that's ridiculous, but whatever. Or are they going to say, well, that's what people are going to think. I'm not nearly as high on Ryan Moore as this price is saying he should be. I'm going to go away from him. And so his ownership, just trying to predict it, is so weird to me. But if you think he's going to be lower owned than he should be. I think he can play well here. Despite, again, I think he's going to be hurt by the changing greens because he's not a good putter, and you have to be a good putter for these types of greens. But yeah, I mean, I think someone like Ryan Moore specifically is very much about ownership. If you think he's going to be lower owned than he should be, roll with him. If you think he's going to be over owned, I wouldn't feel too bad about fading him. The 9 to 10K range is really, really where I start to get interested in guys. Keegan Bradley, Gary Woodland, like I said, really, really like those two guys. They just are tremendous ball strikers and can put lots of birdies together. They score on par fives. They're just the types of guys who are going to be in position to make a lot of birdies, and you're just asking for putts to go in. Grillo, another guy, Cabrera Bello, and Kyle Stanley. I think those 5 guys are going to be fairly popular, which leaves Leishman and Snedeker, who I don't really like as much. But I mean, both are very good players. I think if I had to guess, those two have won on tour more than the other 5 guys combined, probably. So they've proven they can win, and Snedeker's got good form. So even, I mean, again, like you can, I'm not being very helpful. I guess I'm just making arguments for each guy and letting you decide from there. But I think if you're going for guys who you think should fare well at a course like this, and you would pick the original 5 guys I stated, roll with lineups like them. If you're going for more like a contrarian, lower owned type thing, I think you could make an argument for Snedeker or Leishman. All right, let's move on to the middle tier, which we'll go with 8 to 8,900. And I'm not really a huge fan of anyone here, to be honest. Oosthuizen, Grace, JB Holmes, Pat Perez. Pat Perez won here last year. There's an argument for him, but like he has not been good at all. Kevin Tway won last week, and he scores on par fives. So there's something. With no cut, I mean, Kevin Tway can make birdies. He proved it last week. Danny Lee makes a ton of birdies, more than anyone in this range behind Kevin Na. So I could see going with him. CT Pan is a really solid all-around player. He just can't putt, which is frustrating. But, like, you know, if you're one of those guys like me who likes to torture themselves and go with guys who are really good ball strikers and just hope they get the putter going, he's a guy. Cam Smith, I don't think his, like, stats really say he should play well here, but he has a good course history. And I read something about how, like, where he grew up is, like, similar conditions, so he's just, like, very comfortable here. Intangible stuff like that, usually, you know, people who are very analytical don't believe in that stuff, but I think in golf that matters some, just comfort. And so I could see Cam Smith as a good play. Na's a good play. I mean, Na can putt really well. He's got a good short game. His length won't hurt him, so he'll just be able to, like, be in fairways and, you know, make putts. Like, that's what Kevin Na does. This is the type of course he can just randomly win at. And then finally, Ben On is just, you know, similar to what I was talking about, like Kevin Tway or CT Pan. Really good ball striker. Can't putt at all. So, I mean, he got, what was the term? Was it John Deere or not John Deere? It was Fort Worth, I think, whatever, when he was in the final group with DJ and got second. He's proven that he can have really good weeks, and maybe he's a little overpriced, but I think he's one of the more underrated players on tour, and he's a really, really good ball striker. He can just put some putts together. And then finally, we'll go down to this to the bottom, and I'll just, quickly go through a few guys I like. Howell is just really solid. I'm not sure I really like him in this format. I think his ownership will be low because he's just like so boring. Like nobody gets to Charles Howell and is like, yeah, let's go him. Like that's never been said in the entire history of the world. I mean, I guess like maybe his dad, Charles Howell II, or whatever the hell. Hostler doesn't rate out well here, but he sort of seems to defy that. I don't know. He's never been a great ball striker statistically, but like if you just, and maybe this is one of those cognitive bias things or whatever the expression is, it just seems like he's in contention more than these other guys. Like, yeah, like you've heard people talk about Peter Uline or Ches Reavie once or twice, but it definitely seems like Hostler has been in like late Sunday. I mean, he was in that playoff against Ian Poulter where he just collapsed. And he can putt really, really well. Fourth in the world in strokes gained putting on a course where like his ball striking woes may not punish him as much because like who the hell cares? It's a bunch of short par fours and par fives where like he doesn't even have to do much. Just like hit an iron in the fairway and get it on the green and hope his putter can get hot. Ryder had a great week last week. He was really low owned. That was beautiful. Another dude he just can't putt, but hey, he made some putts last week. He he was always like a sort of worse Luke List to me. But I mean, he's not like a super bomber like Luke List, but just man, when you roll with him and he just misses putts that seem beyond the realm of possibility. But last week he made 4 or 5 footers to save par. That really kept his momentum going. It was nice. So I would definitely be interested in going in Sam Ryder. Burgoon and Peters at 7,500. It's honestly a similar conversation to what I was just talking about with Hostler versus the guys in his range. And what I mean by that is Burgoon just, I mean, he's going to rate out well every week because his numbers across the board are just solid. Like, just look at him across the board. 51st in accuracy, 45th in strokes gained off the tee, 71st in tee to green, 42nd in approach. He's a top 100 putter. He makes birdies. He scores on par fives. He makes birdies on par fives. Like, every week, a guy like that is just going to, it doesn't matter what course you play at. If you do everything pretty well on a consistent basis, you should eventually break out. But the problem is he doesn't ever seem to. I mean, yeah, he's had good days or good few days, but I mean, gun to your head, would you really bet on him to win over Thomas Peters? I wouldn't. And that could be ignorant, and maybe that doesn't even matter. I mean, maybe you're just going for at 7,500 the guy who more consistently is going to have the higher median, and that's a very valid argument. And if you're stuck at this price and have to make a decision, go with Burgoon. But if you're looking for someone who you expect to see in contention on Sunday some percentage of the time, I just think I'd go with Peters. Jimmy Walker and Si Woo at 7,400. Their stats don't like him at all. We know what Jimmy Walker is. He's a major champion, the most boring major champion of all time. And Si Woo is, I don't know. I mean, I'm not really too excited about either of these guys. Especially with the guys just below him at 7,300, Chappell and Kiradech. Chappell rates out really well. He just, again, can't putt. We're starting to notice a trend here. Kiradech doesn't rate out quite as well, but he has good course history, which is nice. So I don't think you could go wrong with either of those guys. Sink, Kokrak, Answer, Cook, all solid plays at 7,100 and 7,200. Dahman, if you're looking for someone at 7,000, Dahman is a guy you could go with. He hits it really well, doesn't putt. I mean, that's all these guys. Like, none of these guys are top 150 putters. Ooh, Kokrak's 111th. Good job, Jason. But man, that dude, and his driving accuracy shouldn't really matter that much because, like, yeah, he'll bring it on par fives where he scores with the best of them. But on these shorter par fours, I mean, this dude is an absolute bomber, and he can just hit like 5-iron. And I mean, if he can't hit the fairway with 5-irons, he can just fuck off. I mean, just hand in your tour card, bud. And then sub 7Ks. I definitely liked a few guys. Keith Mitchell, always gonna like, can't putt, but I mean, dude just makes birdies, no cut. That's beautiful. Brian Gay, really like, the opposite of Keith Mitchell. Chesson Hadley, always gonna like. Really let me down last week, but I mean, for 6,800, he's just better than who you're gonna get in this range, which is actually interesting that I say that because I'm not sure I'm not sure what he's done to prove that he's better than Brendan Steele. Like, at least Brendan Steele's won on tour. But the stats say otherwise, and like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, Chesson Hadley is one of the weirdest aberrations ever. Like, if you just look at this across the board, this is stupid. He should be contending in tournaments. And it's not like he's a bad putter. It's not like he's Keith Mitchell. You know, he was a top 50 putter, almost a top 50 putter last week. Like, come on, dude, just put it all together one week. I've gone with you every week for 50 weeks in a row. You can do it. Armor's solid. You know, he's really accurate off the tee. Yeah, I mean, I guess like Armor's just one of those solid web.com guys who has proven, even though like his birdie stats aren't great, like when he has a really good tournament, he can compete in these tournaments. And at 6,800, he's a guy you could just put with JT, and I don't think you'd be disappointed. Of course, JJ Spawn. I mean, I'm just basically saying the same guys. These amazing ball strikers can't putt. I'm not sure you want to like just load your team with them because like how likely is it that JJ Spawn and Keith Mitchell have hot putting weeks this week? But you can definitely throw one of them on your team and feel pretty good about it for a sub 7,000 guy. And then lastly, another great ball striking, good scoring on par 5, horrible putter, Ryan Palmer. And so I think you're going to notice a trend because I wasn't just saying one type of player. I was sort of, this is just a course where like anybody can score. I mean, yes, certain things do slightly better than other. But and yeah, I mean, I'm going to go Keith Mitchell over Troy Merritt. Like, whatever. Like, Troy Merritt might play well. He played well last week, but there are certain edges, obviously, and I hope I helped at least narrow the field down. But what I'm about to get into is more important, and that's lineup construction, which I'll talk about for a few minutes. Oh, for a second, I'll scroll through my value so you can see that, see who. This is from best to worst. This is my formula divided by their price. So it's like not a pure power rankings, it's price adjusted. And then some guys just don't have the formula because I don't have stats for them. But so anyways, I've talked about this before, but the last thing I want to talk about is in these types of tournaments, it's really hard to create a unique lineup because there's only 80 guys, and in these big fields where people can make tons of lineups, just everyone's going to be owned, and all these different lineup combinations are going to be used more so than like last week. So first of all, you want to think about ownership when you're considering your players. That's really important. Like it always is, because obviously having some dude at 8% is better than having him at 20%. But it's especially important this week. You just can't make super chalky teams because those lineups, you're not going to be the only one. And DraftKings is so top heavy that not having unique lineups is kind of a killer to your ceiling and to your EV. But the second thing you can do is leave money left over. I think everyone sort of has that OCD tick where they want to where they want to have zero remaining balance. And I understand it, because if you have 200 left over, I mean, just look anywhere. You know, like 200 left over, and you have Brant Snedeker in your lineup. Well, you could just go Cabrera Bello, and I mean, there's a reason he's 9,300 and not 9,100, right? But the slight point equity increase that using the money left over gives you is just hugely negated, more than negated, by the chance that your lineup is duplicated, and you don't want that. So I would highly recommend pricing down a little bit and leaving yourself. I mean, there was that in for the Monday Night Football game last night. There's those showdown contests where they only do it's a contest for only the Monday Night Football game, and the winning lineup, my friend was 0.4 out of first or something, and he had 5 guys and Michael Thomas. And the winning lineup, by the way, his lineup, he had the same lineup as 500 other people. So, I mean, it's whatever. But the winning lineup was the same lineup, except Michael Thomas, the same 5 guys, except instead of Michael Thomas, he had Cameron Meredith. And that lineup was only duplicated once. And that was, I mean, this isn't, doing PGA this week isn't as crazy as a showdown Monday Night Football. Because that was he left 8,000 left over. I'm not recommending that. Although, if you really are confident in 6 guys, 8K and under, hell, just roll with it. But the point is that you really have to get creative to improve your chances at having a unique lineup. And that's just going to about do it for me today. I'm really excited for the new season, and thank you to anyone who takes the time to watch. As always, comments or criticisms are greatly welcomed and appreciated. Good luck to everyone this week. See you next week.